I do want to address the specificity of health and safety and cleanliness in encampments, because I know that that's what these food ordinances are talking about addressing. We could address that many different ways. Most notably, as Dr. Avegno and Taylor spoke about, the porta potty issue needs to be resolved. And I just want to be clear, the fecal matter is being dumped on the ground next to the porta potties. There is human waste, including as recently as this morning, next to these porta potties. The trash cans would help greatly. And I just think until we address issues like that, human waste sitting on the ground in encampments, it's very difficult to justify coming for anything that could impact already limited food sources in the encampments. So more trash cans and better service trash cans would be great. Once again, shout out to Kevin and Marty, our interns, who went out this morning and looked at every single encampment along the Calliope corridor and found many with zero trash cans at all. But also in every encampment, Black trash bags like Eugene Green, like you spoke about, Councilmember Green, where people are already rounding up their own trash. People want to live in clean environments. People are doing the work to make their own environment clean. And I think whatever we can do to facilitate that without risking taking away people's food is what we need to pursue. And there are many avenues. So I'd say improving and addressing the porta potty cleanup situation. And I know that it's worked on and I'm grateful that it's being worked on. I would also like to highlight that if it were any other population, if this were how the porta potties at Jazz Fest were serviced between day 1 and day 2, it probably would have been fixed faster. And I know that it's difficult. I have done city contracting myself, but I just want to highlight once again the context of where any conversation we're happening about these ordinances, about the larger structures at play, keep in mind the biases that shape all of us about what is urgent, what is emergent, what is justifiable, what is a quality of life issue to you, what is a life or death issue to someone else. So just keeping that in mind. There are other things we would like to ask for beyond servicing of the portalets and increased trash cans. We are happy that Taylor will be bringing us toilet paper. We will be happy to pass it out. We would also, I know that this has been discussed as difficult before, an increased implementation of safe, sharp disposal containers so that Taylor is not picking them up himself. And also communally accessible Narcan, just that once again, if we're concerned about life and death and quality of life in the encampments, I have yet to hear of any story of someone dying due to food poisoning in the encampments, but many people do die due to other causes like insufficient water, like overdoses, like the inability to get to a doctor for decades of congestive heart failure. So all of those things could be solved through better sanitation, but all of those conditions are exacerbated by hunger. So we don't want to remove people's food. I know I'm going on long. Please grant me the remaining minutes of this remaining page. I'm always a long-winded person. One thing I want to highlight is also that we could use more outreach funding. There are currently 7 full-time and 2 part-time unpaid interns at our agency, 7 full-time employees in the outreach team. 2 of those outreach individuals are paid for through agreements with the French Market Corporation and French Quarter Economic Improvement District. Sorry, I probably got that wrong. French Quarter Economic Development District, sorry. And then 2 are paid for through DDD funding, Downtown Development District. We are grateful to those partners for working on contracts with us that they have, in the DDD's case, renewed for years. In the FMC and FQEDD's case, they have intimated they would like to renew for us. Other than that, we have piecemeal funding. We have 2 excellent outreach workers, Parker, who works in the Treme, Marigny, and Bywater, as well as Liam, who works in the Calliope and Lower Garden District, whose funding we independently sought from a police alternatives grant through Baptist Community Ministries. That funding is due to run out at the end of February. Thus far, Parker and Liam in their areas have often housed up to 5 people per month for the time that they've been working here. And at the end of February, a few months from now, their contributions to that work could be gone if we are not able to find continuation funding for their positions. So once again, those 14 people who already have vouchers in hand, those 18 people who have everything completed and are waiting to have a voucher in hand, to get us to that 1 in 7 number who could be housed by the end of this week if the system side errors could be fixed. That's possible because of outreach. And right now, beyond our relationships with FMC, FQEDD, and through the DDD. We have piecemeal funding. We have another outreach worker who's wonderful, Janelle, recently joined us through state funding matched and managed by Unity. Her funding runs out at the end of January. About half of our outreach team is time limited funding that we have found. We would love to see investment from the city. We would love to see investment from city community members, but to be clear, we don't want that investment to come from donations that are encouraged or coerced. Instead of giving people food, we believe that the city has the funds to invest in our work. And my final point is that there is of what we could do better to improve existing infrastructure that allows individuals to address their hygiene and to connect through services throughout the day, that they can come out of encampments and be in air conditioning for a while. For instance, our building at 1530 Gravier, the Community Resource and Referral Center, has been plagued by plumbing and sewage issues since late November. We have been unable to offer showers to people there since late November due to city contracting issues that I know many people in this room are aware of, but that prevent the building from functioning as it should. Similarly, our partners at the Harry Thompson Center who work at the Rebuild Center are now the only walk-in shower site in the city. And they are very taxed. They've had the same infrastructure since Hurricane Katrina afterwards when they built the Rebuild Center. They also need funds to redevelop their center. The few existing sites that we do have are desperate for an infusion of investment so that we can serve people as we should. We are strapped for space at the Community Resource and Referral Center. Currently, our 9-person outreach team shares a one-room office. So there are many opportunities for investment. There are many opportunities for harm reduction. There are many opportunities, even on the big scale stuff that seems like we're not going to solve it in quality of life, like affordable housing and all the vouchers we need. Any investment matters, and any investment is a better decision than punishing people for trying to help people address their hunger. Thank you.
So just to talk through about the outreach piece, we have already addressed the outreach piece, and you should be seeing funds for outreach being released as soon as possible. Of course, the word of the month is procurement, but we have already addressed it and we have already signed the paperwork for it, so it should be released soon. And other things, I have personally taken on, with my office, taken on the portalettes. To be able to assist with the cleaning and the maintenance of it. I am going out to the locations, and instead of waiting for someone else to tell me what's going on, I'm actually going in to look at the issues the same way I have done with the low barrier shelter, and thank City Council for releasing funds for that as well. We have to do more, for sure. And there's a lot of things that I've been seeing since I've been here for the 5 months of different areas where we have to improve on. And a lot of that, of course, is affordable housing, as everyone here has echoed 1,000 times. But we also have to address some of the things that are happening day in and day out with the sources that we currently have at hand. The individuals in each one of these encampments is very important to this movement of one, raising up the housing crisis that we are currently facing. And I thank everyone here for all of the work that you continuously do day in and day out, because every last one of you has helped me with situations that I come in contact with. Over this weekend, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, I was out passing out waters, and I came in contact with individuals who are in those encampments who desperately want to get connected to housing and housing services. We don't have enough. We do not have enough things in place. We don't have transportation in place. And these individuals here at the table have been so gracious with helping in any way they possibly can with those individuals at each encampment. And when me and Taylor go out and do those cleanings, we are talking to the individuals at the encampments, letting them know that we are trying to do everything we possibly can to assist them best we can. And I do know it's hard and there's not enough infrastructure in place for the individuals, but with anything that we get coming into the city side, we are definitely making sure that we relinquish those services out best we possibly can.
Thank you, Nate. Martha, I have one question before turning questions over to my fellow council members. Then we'll get to public comment, of which we have a lot. But I do want to say that for item number 5, which is my ordinance calendar 34305, the communications campaign, I'm going to defer it and work with the advocates on figuring out how we can make something workable. And I know this also touches upon some sanitation issues. And again, I want to work with the advocates in the health department on making sure that these encampments are as sanitary as possible, including Dr. Vegno potentially exploring sharp disposal. I know that's been an ongoing issue. Martha, can you talk about the 400 vouchers? So that's coming in the fall. Will there be a reporting mechanism of how many of those vouchers are going out and when? And once we get those 400 vouchers, do we have 400 units identified where people, once voucher is in hand, can go to?
So it's 420 people that we think will be able to provide vouchers for. Although some of that is what's called rapid rehousing. So it's not a permanent voucher, but it would last as long as the person needs to before they become self-sufficient, hopefully. And we probably will be using a lot of shared housing strategies with the people in the rapid rehousing, because there's no way that people can afford these rents themselves. Fair market rent is now over $1,000 a month. So we have, thanks to Blue Cross Blue Shield, we have a new housing search database that we're putting into place with staff to work on that as well. So I think that will help the housing search and help the ability to recruit landlords. But it's going to be a process of getting folks assessed, to getting them housed. I would expect that most of that will take about 12 months for the whole group of 420 to get housed. So it doesn't necessarily make sense to try to identify 420 units, even though, and you couldn't, given the current housing market, I think, you know, at one time identify that many. But we will definitely be expanding our capacity to identify more units. And we'll be working on, you know, trying to get as many people housed as quickly as we can in the beginning of the 12 months rather than waiting until the end, as much as we possibly can.
And for example, I think you said, Angela, 14 people have vouchers in hand, ready to go.
Just working with our own outreach team, that number is certainly higher in terms of people living in shelters or working with other outreach teams.
So how do we have an estimate or approximate sense of how many people are living unsheltered with vouchers in hand?
I know that number from our team, and I will say the backlog has gotten better over the past couple months in terms of there were times where that number was much higher for our own team. Many of those people have viewed apartments already. They're in the queue. That 14 that it is today could be a different 14 people a month or two from now. I am seeing flow, and I think my team would agree compared to right after Ida. So there is constant flow. What the current number is, I don't know. And I think what we want to look at is both the number at any given time, but also for each of those 14 or each of whatever the total number is, how long do they remain that state, unsheltered but voucher in hand? You want that time period to obviously be as short as possible.
And is there a way to collect that information?
Yeah.
Are we collecting it?
We have it for our own team, yeah.
No, what I can tell you is that, and I don't have the number in my head, but I know it's less than the current length of time for the past several months to, from the time that a person is referred to a permanent supportive housing program, which means that, you know, they have all of their paperwork, they qualify for it, and then they are actually referred to a program, and then that program starts looking for housing for that person. It's taking less than 2 months now to house a person from the time that they're referred. So that's considerably improved over what it was during much of 2022. So but it's still longer than it was, I think, prior to the pandemic. We were often housing people much in much less time than that. I do think, I think some of the data that I looked at before, from Travelers Aid, it was a combination of different things. It was people who had been approved for housing through the continuum of care. It was people who had fallen out of housing. So they were in a program, but they had been evicted by a landlord, but they were still in the program. They still had a voucher. Or they left their apartment for some reason. And so that's, you know, a whole different thing of trying to get that person back into housing. And then the third category would be people who had HANO vouchers. And, you know, that's a different thing, because they would pretty much be depending only on the outreach worker for help, because I don't think that HANO necessarily has case managers to assist people to get housed. So it really depends. And then, you know, you have people who have vouchers from the you know, from the continuum of care, and then you have people who have vouchers from the state permanent supportive housing program, and their systems are a little bit slower just because they have fewer staff to do the housing search. So a lot depends on what kind of voucher you're talking about, but we do have good data on that.
Well, luckily we have some folks from the state here who can push on getting this state offices staffed up. I do want to touch Health Department on Clutch Consulting, where we are, expectations, what we can see. And then I will turn it over to my fellow council members to ask any questions. Nate, you want to?
Yeah, currently we, Clutch Consultant has officially started, contract signed. We started work on Friday of last week. They will be on site Wednesday and Thursday of this week, going to the different encampments to check in and get contact with individuals at those encampments to see what the need is, and also look at what the barriers are with Unity and Travelers Aid assistance. Also meeting with the health department, seeing what areas they need to help fill, so we can help get those individuals housed and housed more efficiently without crossing the barriers of like mental health, addiction, those things, and not ignoring those things, but actually paying close attention to how we can resolve those issues at the same time of housing the individual.
Yeah, and just to sort of back up what this is. So this is a team of experts who worked extensively across the country, most notably in Houston and Dallas, where they were able to cut the homelessness rate by more than half in a very short period of time. And they are providing really technical expertise and support to all of our efforts, a community-wide effort, two really main ways. Number one, in short, medium, and long-term deep strategic planning that is entirely of the community and will be community-led. So some of the first things they're going to be doing is having a series of community engagement forums with individuals, lived experience, advocates, providers, the business community, civic leaders, et cetera. Really, it's a perfect time because we are at the same time Unity's funds are coming in. This is going to help us as a community figure out the best way to use them, not only in the short term, because as Martha said, you know, when those 400 are housed, we still have to have a plan, but long term, and then all commit to working together. And then specifically, their areas of expertise are in looking at encampments and figuring out, again, with the work of our very hardworking partners, how to get people housed direct from encampments to housing, right? So addressing encampments in a systematic fashion and really drilling down and having a strike team approach to get folks more quickly into housing. So to use all of the expertise and knowledge that's already happening, but help us really streamline the process. So, you know, we expect a lot of all of us, we expect a lot of them, but they have shown good results. So I'm hopeful that we will see the same here.
Great, thank you. Councilmember King, any questions for this panel? Councilmember Green?
Dr. Avegno and Mr. Fields, you all have expressed a concern relative to feeding and to individuals and organizations going to encampments to engage in the feeding. In fact, you have stated that you would prefer that it not be done the way it's being done now. Would you care to elaborate on that?
Sure, I'll tell you what is problematic for us over the years, and we have been doing the public health and safety events for several years now. What we see is that there are a lot of folks who do try to provide in a safe, sanitary manner sustenance, as Angela has so eloquently spoken to. What we also see is that for various reasons, individuals and organizations often come and frankly dump things that are really unfit for any consumption. We've seen boxes and boxes of rotten bananas. We've seen trays and plates of raw meat, really, which is, I'm not quite sure the rationale behind it. That very clearly is a risk to everybody's health and safety. And you know, we have tried to engage with groups that have done this in the past, and just to explain to them and figuring out better ways to help those on the street get regular sustenance. And I will agree, it's very challenging right now. We don't have the same number of feeding programs that are done in a safe, sanitary manner as we did before the pandemic. At the same time, some of these bulk drop-offs and dumping really do, if we're being honest, present unsafe conditions. Taylor, I don't know if you want to.
Yeah, I think, you know, a great example of this is folks well-intentioned after some sort of catered event, whether it be a graduation or wedding or what have you. They've got, you know, all these leftover trays of food from their event, and they think, you know, the goodness of their hearts, they want to go take it to an encampment space to feed the folks out there. You know, well-intentioned, but you know, they drop it off to someone, that person, you know, has a meal from it, but then it sits there for days and it deteriorates, and then it becomes food for the rodents. And as I mentioned before, we have some pretty significant rodent issues in encampment areas. And so that's really what I see that gives me trouble, is these large, you know, rotting trays of catered food that are just being left to sit, that turn into food for rodents.
And it's not to say that there aren't persons who are doing this and doing this the correct way. We're talking to the individuals who aren't doing it the correct way, who are dropping off trays of food on the corners or on the street level and hoping that people will come over and start self-serving. But some of this stuff sits for days, so if individuals get to it, and then they start getting sick. So there are some folks like this weekend who are passing out the trays of food, who are standing by with trash bags, cleaning up the mess after the person's finished eating. Those are the groups who are doing it the right way. We have individuals with the large trays who are dumping these trays in the middle of these locations, leaving this stuff for several days at a time. And then we have rat infestations that take over at the encampments. Those are the individuals who we were talking to when we were talking about the food drop-offs that are happening in the middle of encampments.
So you all are three persons who see, like I see it every day, that issue with regards to cleanliness and the like. But you would agree right now that there is nothing in the ordinance which prevents you from having food like this in covered containers to bring it to those who are unhoused. Am I correct in that regard?
If that's if that's the way you wrote the ordinance, then
Yes.
yeah.
Yeah, oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I was, you all read it. You all read it. There's nothing in there that makes it illegal. I have a card here that says making it illegal to feed the hungry should be illegal. There is nothing that the city of New Orleans or this council is going to do to make it such that we can't get sustenance to those who are in need, and that we are going to do anything illegal for those who are involved with the feeding. What we are talking about is large trays of food brought from picnics, brought from banquets, brought from other activities that are simply left out there with a spoon, with a paper plate, and says, go and feed yourself. That's the dumping that we're talking about, and they mentioned this specifically. We're gonna have a lot of comments now that are off base and irresponsible as they're read, because there is nothing that the city of New Orleans is doing to make it illegal to feed those who are in need of food. What we are trying to do, and we will, if we get the votes to do it, is to address what we say is one of the most significant rodent problems that we've had. But Dr. Avegno, you've also expressed a concern in the past that it would be helpful to people to go into food banks. I understand that we don't have as much. Why is that helpful?
Well, it's always helpful to have a meal in a place where you have access to be able to wash your hands and a bathroom, right? And we have providers that do a really good job of that every day. We don't have enough of them.
We don't have enough.
And that therein lies the problem. Obviously, providing spoiled or unsanitary food is not the solution. I think what we're all advocating for here is increased resources, just as Taylor and Nate have said. If we had more resources to clean, we could clean the encampments. If we had more trash bags or trash receptacles, we could throw things away better. All of those things being supported would create a better environment overall.
Supporting those who are unhoused would include supporting an end to the dumping of food at the locations. Am I correct?
Well, it certainly would, everything that would support increasing the health of those who live there. We call that harm reduction, right? Anything we can do to reduce harm while still supporting those individuals, I think, is what we're all talking about here today.
Okay, in light of that, I'd just like to make a couple of comments because we can address it at the time the ordinance comes up, but because it has come up so many times relative to food insecurity and also with regards to health and rodent infestations and also getting into a place where you can get assistance maybe while you're eating. I do want to make it clear. My ordinance is a one-page ordinance. It isn't something that is pages and pages. And what it does is it does not penalize people for feeding the homeless. It does not. It was made in response to public health concerns and safety concerns that I've observed and also brought to the attention of my office and others on the council by the health department and the director of homeless services and strategy. It's intended to curb the rodent infestation and foodborne illnesses that result from unsealed and unattended food drop-offs, not something that someone who is interested in supporting those who are unhoused does so in a way that protects them. Members of the public can donate closed container foods that are not in bulk, for example, the bananas, when there is adequate provisions for removal of the waste. That is fair. I'm also presenting an amendment today to make it clear so that there won't be running with misinformation that provides a first-time offender's waiver relative to receiving a penalty. So it would be receiving a warning citation. Again, this is not intended to stop any mutual aid group. And I'm a member of groups such as the Alphas, such as the church organizations that want to help those who are unhoused. We want to educate well-intended individuals about proper food safety and handling. And that is in my ordinance. I do want to recognize that we haven't said much about those people who live around encampments. Those people who attempt to do business on Claiborne Avenue. Those businesses that for decades, honestly, have had one excuse thrown at them after another about why government is not going to support them in business, whether it be the building of the elevated expressway or whether it be not addressing the cleanliness of those encampments near them. There are people who are affected by this who are not necessarily in encampments. And I want to make sure that we don't forget them. Some of those business owners are here. They see some of those concerns. They walk amongst, they can't send their children across the street from their businesses or houses because of needles and because of unsanitary conditions. They have rights too. And we need to be concerned about their rights while we talk about the rights of everyone else. Everyone else has a right to exist in the city of New Orleans without tremendous problems relative to their liberty and the like. But I don't want us to run in, because we have 115 online comments about my ordinance, and so many of them say it will criminalize and make illegal feeding of the homeless. It will not. As many times as we say it, I don't know if it's going to pass today, but as many times as we want to iterate it in other ways, it is not going to make feeding of the homeless illegal. You can leave here today if this ordinance passes and take containers. What you can't bring is a large tray and just leave the food. And that happens all the time. All the time. I see it. It is in my district. I'm concerned about it. And I'm concerned about those who run with what they think something is versus reading it to see what it is. So at this time, Madam Chair, I don't have any comments. I want to thank everyone who is associated and who's here today because you're concerned about what you see. I'm also concerned about what I see very specifically. 2 weeks ago, unfortunately, a person's body was removed from a building across from the homeless encampment. That person was deceased. There was once a time when we kept statistics on the number of people who died in homeless encampments. I know, for example, back in 2019, it was 63, and maybe it was higher. Last year, 500 people in our city died from overdoses, almost twice, well, not just twice, but over 1.5 times the number of persons who were murdered in our city. A lot of those people died as a result of not getting the support and the health outcomes that they needed. And we know that it's a very complex matter and we want to address it in whatever way is possible. But I think Councilman Thomas was alluding to as he left, let's work it out and communicate and not be enemies with each other. Some of the calls that I've gotten, some of the emails that I've gotten would make you think that members of the council wake up each morning and say, what can we do to oppress the unhoused? What can we do to oppress the homeless? Not thinking about any other facts other than their own beliefs. At this time, the city council is focused, just as you all are, as members of the city, just as you all are, in providing the maximum relief and assistance that we can to those who are unhoused. We would never do anything to make housing, or we would never do anything to make feeding those who are unhoused illegal. And I just want to make that clear in the comments.
Okay, thank
Very
you.
much.
All right, so the way that this is gonna go, remember, everybody has 2 minutes per comment. I'm gonna keep you to that because we have a lot of comments. Okay, I'm sorry, Councilmember King?
I'll be brief. Councilman Green and Harris pretty much said almost everything I wanted to say. I just want to reiterate that this ordinance or none of these ordinances are here to punish the unhoused. It is not illegal. This ordinance does not make it illegal to feed the unhoused population. I've fed the unhoused population. It's not illegal to do it. Ask you to do it responsibly in a way that treats the unhoused humane and with dignity. Again, please don't just take your leftover picnic food or your leftovers from your refrigerator that you no longer want and just dump it at the foot of an encampment. That doesn't help anyone. All that does is exacerbate the problems at these encampments, the rodent problems, the illnesses that are at these encampments. So please, when you come up here and comment, understand that this is not preventing you from giving the unhoused food or water. We're asking that you do it in a responsible, humane way that treats the unhoused with dignity. Please wrap it up. Please put it in a container. If you want to come out and have it a buffet cafeteria style, that is 1000% legal. We just ask that you throw it away, throw the trash away once you're done, because leftover trash creates a rodent problem. So when you come up here, just understand that we're not doing that, and anything that suggests that is truly disingenuous. Also, I like to hear that I'm proud to hear that people are looking out for the unhoused when it comes to the housing insecurities. I just want to make sure we don't lose sight that there are thousands and hundreds of people who are not unhoused, who are struggling with housing insecurities every day. I never heard them spoken about. They don't have the luxury of yes, you yes, you spoke, yes, ma'am, but they often go unlooked. They often go ignored. Not all the time by the advocates at the table, but let's not forget about them. All right, so please, when you come up, let's keep it germane to the topics at hand. We're not making it illegal. We just told you that you can do it. Do it in a reasonable, humane, dignified way, and pick up after yourself. And one last thing, Councilman Harris, I promise you I'm done. Keep in mind those who live and do business next to the encampments. Mr. Charbonnet, who's been there for decades. State Representative Knox, who lives next to these encampments. Residents and owners of businesses in the French quarters who live next to the encampments that are losing business, that have to deal with the issues that come with being by the encampments because of the way that we think we're helping, but we're making the problems worse. So let's have a a dignified and a conversation about this matter so we can get some real results. Thank you.
All right, and I'm going to keep it dignified by keeping everyone to 2 minutes. I do again, just want to reiterate that we need to work with the health department on getting sharps, receptacles, getting trash bags distributed, working on the sanitation of the encampments generally. And certainly, while I respect the ordinance that y'all put in, I do think that this may be better as an educational campaign rather than by imposing fines. So the way that this is gonna go, I have a stack of cards that do not have an item number on them. I'm gonna take them first. Then I have a stack of cards that want to address 34,304. I have withdrawn 34,305, and then Councilmember Green will deal with 34,277. All right, all on the same page. And I'm sorry, 308. And there was somebody who came in to talk about scrap metal. We already dealt with this. I'm happy to talk with you afterwards, Vivian. All right, so the first speaker is Yusuf from Treme.
This microphone? Yes,
Speak into that mic.
yes. Good evening, fellow New Orleans citizens. My name is Safillah Yusuf. I live in the 1700 block of Racelines Avenue. I think each encampment has its own peculiarities. For instance, where we are, most of these people have been offered housing and they have refused it. And in a 2 blocks area from the 1000 block to the 1200 block of Claiborne Street, we find a lot of these people are not from New Orleans. They have voiced their opinion that they do not want to have some type of housing. So I find that a lot of these people are drug addicts and are mentally ill. There's a lot of thievery going on. There's a lot of drugs being sold all day, every day. And I'm a health major. I have a master's degree in health. If you don't remove them from that, you are endangering the people that live in the neighborhood. I'm reading them on the paper right now about COVID on the uprise. None of these dogs that they have are inoculated. The people are not inoculated. The toilets are, just like you say, feces all over. I have feces all in my yard. Well, 5 times I've almost had to pull a pistol on people who have come in there and threatened me in my own house and on my own properties. And like today, I'm speaking for the betterment of everybody. If the people are really housed, are being homeless is one thing, but if you're drug addicts and taking advantage of the city and using your money to buy drugs all day, it's a different situation. And I find that to be the situation in our neighborhood. I want to build some businesses in that neighborhood, but I'm afraid to because of the way these people behave and the climate of the neighborhood. Now, as I'm speaking, I'm gonna say this, and I don't want to be
Sir,
negative as I say this.
that's your time. I'll give you a couple more seconds, but
Yes,
we
yeah,
got a lot of
okay,
cards.
yeah, well, give me a few more seconds like you gave the other people. Here's what I'm gonna say now, and I mean it from the bottom of my heart. Who am I speaking to? Where are our officials? And I find that to be a regular issue. I'm speaking to the walls. Where are all of our council people? If we put our heads together, we can defeat some of these problems. But I don't think we're doing our best effort at that.
Thank
So
you.
I'm just begging, yeah, okay, I'm
Thank
sorry.
you.
Thank you for allowing me to speak.
No, thank you. Mr. Sertan, followed by Mr. Tucker. Tucker's gone too. Sertan?
Hello, my name's Lee Tucker. I've been in New Orleans since 1972, and most of that time I've been an artist on Jackson Square. Been very involved with all sorts of the community organizations. I see this as a big problem. I appreciate all the efforts that are being made. One thing that sort of stands out to me is the talk about encampments. Now, I work on Jackson Square. Do we consider that an encampment? I mean, all the problems that you talk about in encampments, I see on Jackson Square. I don't see people, most of the people I have contact with, not all, but most of them seem like they're perfectly satisfied and almost proud of being able to live on Jackson Square, being fed, getting drinks, everything else, using the bathroom. That I'll have my art set up and somebody will come up and urinate into Jackson Square with no sense that anybody would say anything to them. I also go by St. Philip and Claiborne a lot, going back and forth to work. And my encounters with that encampment are very limited. All I see is what I see in passing. But one thing I notice is piles of bicycles and bicycle parts. Now you talk about personal property. Surely one person in this tent doesn't personally use and possess 15, 20 bicycles. And it's always my question as to why doesn't this property or why doesn't this person be approached as to how they get these bicycles and what criminality is involved.
That's your time. That's your time, sir.
Lastly, I say
That's your
St.
time.
Philip and Claiborne, the kids go to school by that spot every day during the school year.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Mr. Charbonnet, followed by Mr. Degson.
Good afternoon, Councilman and citizens in New Orleans. Listen, I'm gonna be very brief. I did not come here today to talk about food. I'm not against feeding people. I feed people every Saturday. I have repasts at my facility every Saturday, and excess food that people don't eat, I feed the homeless with. I'm not here for that purpose. I'm here because, just as the gentleman said, when you go to St. Philip and the Ursuline and try to walk on that, under that interstate, which we historically do, we have second line services every weekend. It's just a disgrace for the city to allow what's going on to go on there. Everybody there has 15, 20 bikes. I don't know why they need to have so many bikes, so many parts for bikes. But that's what's going on. And now it's so crowded that they're fighting each other for encroachment on the space that they have. So why can't we just limit the homeless? Okay, you're houseless, you're unhomed, whatever you want to call it. Let's say on public property, you can have a 10 by 10 square footage area that you can occupy. But they got people occupying almost a third of a block with trash. I know it's trash because I watch them digging in the dumpsters all around the neighborhood, and that same trash appears where they are. A couple of months ago, I had my funeral home broken into. I went out and found my property with one of the cleaners, with Mr. Nat. We found a property right there being used. Tried to take it, they claimed it as their own property. Some of it I took away anyway, because it was mine. It's quite expensive. But I know my business is being affected by what's going on in my neighborhood. Now, we are a historic Black neighborhood, the oldest Black subdivision in the state of Louisiana. And we are being disgraced. The oak trees are taken away from us for shade. We got the interstate. Now the interstate is being taken away from because we can't traverse under that interstate anymore. They got needles all over the ground. The kids are picking them up and think there's something to play with. Please help us. I'm not worried about food. I'm not against feeding people. But the health situation in that area is getting terrible, and it's worse. The last time I was out with Nat and Mr. Taylor, it's 3 times worse than what it was before. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Charbonnet. Mr. Degson? Not here. All right.
Madam Chair, may I
Yes.
make a comment?
Yep.
I just wanted to take an opportunity to thank Mr. Charbonnet for his investment over the decades in that location. I know that you've been through a lot in terms of your family, but you not only help those who are unhoused, you're very patient with regards to what goes on in your community. And I just want to say, I understand. I see it every day. I'm sorry that you can't go across the street, for example, your people can't park as the areas were designed to house them. To hold their automobiles. But you've maintained your business and even expanded. And I just want to say, I appreciate your investment. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Major and Andronica, I think, left. Mr. Major? All right. Okay. Come on down.
How everybody doing? My name is Ronald Major.
Ryan.
You know, I wanted to speak up and say that the needles like that are on the ground, I feel that you should speak up on them and say, hey, man, let's cut that off. Because the needles ain't helping nobody. All they doing, like you said, they shoot needles into their home, they getting high, and then they find out going messing up everybody's property. On doing everything. You know what I'm saying? I be at the Rebuild Center. It's a nice, wonderful place. They feed people, they do wonderful things that they help you. But then when you leave out, you're right down the street by this other place, the VA place, they're giving people needles, doing all this and that alcohol thing, and what's happening. I ain't gonna say stop the drinking, but they should stop like other cities at certain times at night. There they go, where they can go get a rest and they can understand, look, man, we got something better to do tomorrow. So at least that could bring peace to their mind. And that's all I would like to speak on.
Thank you, sir. Meharry Morgan, followed by Sandra Gerhold. Oh, Mr. Morgan.
Good evening to everybody in the house. Thank God that I'm in here. I'm here to represent the homeless people that has been cast aside for so many times. But just what I've come to the point in the organization has asked me to state. This city generates a lot of revenue through all kind of category of drawing it in. The people feel that a percentage of every revenue that the city draws into the revenue system should be dedicated to the homeless people. The government give y'all money for the homeless people, and we don't see where the money has been spent, and the homeless people has benefited from it. And also I ask, please, there is other system that can be used that the homeless people can get help from. The Windsor Trust Fund. How many times have you opened the doors up to the Windsor Trust Fund to the homeless people? Remember, God's chief corporate work of mercy is 7. And you all go to church and you shall know it. And the top priority of that chief corporate work of mercy is clothe the naked, feed the homeless. It's in the scripture. We go to church every week. They pick up a collection for the homeless people. We give too much money to other organizations and to other causes that we can't see where the money has been used. Also, you, Oliver Thomas, Green, the people ask me that you apologize to a percentage of them because the statement they state
Mr. Morgan,
a
that's your
percentage
time.
of them do not sting, and you owe them an apology.
Mr. Morgan, that's your time. All right, Anita, on this item, how many public comments do we have? On this item, how many public comments do we have?
On this item, we have 21.
Okay, so because it's just general public comments and we still need to dig into the ordinances, let's just publish that public comment online.
Sure.
Along with anything on the scrap metal ordinance. Can you read the next item?
Next item we have is ordinance calendar number 34,304. An ordinance to amend and reordain chapter 82, article 12, section 82, 694, 697, 699, 700, 701 of the Code of the City of New Orleans to update the definition of personal property removal and storage requirements, and city emergency powers and obligations.
Okay, thank you, Anita. On this, I did work with the health department to try to come up with exclusions from personal property, which include hazardous materials, including things like gasoline, rigid plastic, metal pallets, building materials, things that do not have any immediate identifiable use. This will assist the health department in their cleanups and identifying what personal property is. It does not alter any of the notice requirements, any of the storage requirements. It literally just teases out what is considered hazardous in these encampments. Ms. Gerhold, okay, I'll let you speak after this one. All right. Health Department, any comment on this?
No, to your point, I think what we work together on is to just match the ordinance with the reality of our operation. We don't remove personal property from encampment areas, so I think being very specific about the storage requirements in that context is helpful to me when I'm in the field. Yeah, and I think the items that we've included as hazardous just give us more clarity and help us operate the way we already have been.
Any other comment? Okay, any comments from the council members? All right, we do have public comment on it, but Ms. Gerhardt, why don't we go ahead and have you speak for 2 minutes on the last item, even though it's close?
Oh, I'm not even sure what item that is, but
It's just general homelessness.
Okay.
And I got you on comments for this.
okay. All right, I'm Sandra Gerhold. I live in the 3700 block of Iberville Street. And I want to thank Councilman Green for bringing up the issue of sanitation. I think we have enough activists in the city, enough nonprofits, we're overrun, but where is I stand with the neighbors in Treme, and I think they see the reality of this, and I don't know when it became a thing to be a pitch a tent on public property. We don't even allow that after Mardi Gras. But, there's no private rights on public property. And what I'm hearing from the neighbors and what I think is that if there's a homeless problem, we can help homeless. But the problem isn't just homeless. Part of the problem, some people are homeless is because of a bad situation, maybe abuse or whatever. But there's also drug abuse going on, and we cannot ignore that. We cannot, because I can tell you from having people I know who got involved and the drug addiction, it's hard to walk away from. And that's people who have things to live for, families, jobs. And if you're living under a bridge and this is all you got, it's very hard to give up drug addiction. You cannot put drug addicts and mentally, and I see people sweeping the street, they're mentally gone. I had a guy drop in front of my car on Esplanade the other day, and nobody could pick him up. 5 people picking him up, and then he's out. He is out, and they don't want help. So there's a drug addiction problem. There's a mental disturbance problem, and I'll tell you, Unity put an addict across the street from me for 2 years. He stole from the people. He abused homeless women in the area.
That's your time.
He could not help himself. So I say, yes, you need to screen the mentally ill. They cannot have vouchers to go in neighborhoods.
That's your
It's a
time.
nightmare.
That's your time.
It's a nightmare.
That's
And
your
I'm
time.
telling you,
Thank you.
you can activate somewhere.
Sir, what is your name, and did you put in a yellow card?
Good evening, City Council Harris. This is Darrell King. Of course, I'm a community activist, a community leader, as well as a self-business owner. So I'm just gonna give you just a quick little thing about me. About 15 years ago, I myself was homeless in the city of New Orleans. And it took so long for me to pull myself to where I'm at. But I can honestly say there's one person in here that did save me, and that was Miss BB St. Roman. So I'm gonna always give her due. So, as now being a business owner, looking at the homeless situation right now, I have a major client that does a lot of things for the city. I've had those employees attacked. I've had them try to set the buildings on fire. We need help on that corridor by the bridge. And specifically, it's WDSU, okay, that I'm in charge of for security. On a daily basis, I get reports of being harassed from the employees, drugs, motorcycles, things going over. We need help. There's only so much that we could do. It's time for the city and us to stop talking about doing it, and we need to get something done. There's money coming in this city. Where is it going? Where is it going? Me personally, as my uncle Louis Charbonnet, his business suffers. And that's not fair to us as New Orleanians, that these people come into our city and do what they do, and we're still crying about it. Let's help where we can help and find a solution. Let's stop talking and let's find a solution.
Thank you. And thanks for calling out BB. BB, it's good to see you. Okay, so let's get to public comment on number 4, which is 34304, the clarification of what is hazardous property. 2 minutes again for each person. Jack Sweeney, followed by Marguerite from Habitat. Is she still here? Okay.
My name is Jack Reno Sweeney. I'm here as a representative of New Orleans DSA, an all-volunteer dues-funded organization of over 400 local members. I sent our official statement to each of y'all. I hope you read it, but I'm going to speak from the heart. Briefly on 304 specifically, our issue with that is that it provides an apparent loophole to notice as it concerns tents that are placed on sidewalks. It defines those things as obstructions. And what is and isn't an obstruction is a little bit unclear based on what I've read. I might have seen an old version, I might have seen one page and not another, but I'm going to speak about all three, which I placed on there. During the height of COVID, my better half, Kate, and I distributed food at encampments when most services were not operating as normal. And I'd like to tell you about 2 people that I met. The first was a man who was a wheelchair-bound diabetic who was reluctant to rely on any traditional services at all. Over time, by bringing hot plates and other necessities to him and coming to understand his needs, Kate learned this man was in dire need of medical attention, but he couldn't afford and didn't want an ambulance and didn't want to engage with any other typical emergency services. But he was willing to let Kate and another friend of ours wheel him from the bridge onto his streetcar and all the way to the hospital. As it turned out, that man likely would have lost his foot or leg had Kate not brought him to the hospital. We lost touch with him some months after, but we were lucky enough to share Thanksgiving dinner with him in his home after helping him secure temporary housing. The second story is about a woman who had been living on the streets in various cities for years. By the time Kate and I had met her, she was doing sex work to survive and was suffering some substance addictions. There were obvious reasons why she was hesitant to accept help, but we got to know her and were eventually able to get her needed medical attention and even connected with her former caseworker and family in another state. We lost touch with her for about a year until Kate got a call from her back in her home state, reunited with her family. Her health had improved so much, we couldn't even recognize her voice. I'm telling you these stories because they would not have happened had we not been handing out hot plates under the bridge, meeting people where they were at and supporting them on their terms. If this ordinance penalizing food distribution, Councilman Green's ordinance, if it had been on the books back then,
You need to wrap it up.
if it had been on the books back then, we might have never been there. That man would have lost his leg. That woman would have never been reunited with her family. And a hot plate is an open container. So as I understand it,
Okay.
pursuing a hot plate, a plate, sir, a plate without a lid. Thank you.
Mr. Sweeney? All right, Kevin Ferguson, followed by Katie Lanto of the Harry Thompson Center, followed by Mr. Burnside.
I will try to read fast. Thank you, council members, and thank you, Madam Chair. Kevin Ferguson, representing New Orleans and Company. Certainly comments in support of council's efforts to address homelessness overall in this specific ordinance. The reality right now, we work to drive tourism, conventions, and meetings to our city for the benefit of our residents. But more importantly, we represent our city. We represent almost 80,000 hospitality workers and 1,200 member businesses. We are in a crisis right now. And I applaud the council for their efforts to address this. The folks sitting up on this panel that I've had the pleasure of working with over the last year and a half are a big part of addressing that. Our businesses and residents are struggling to deal with this. The reality is what we're experiencing on the street is a failure of policy and a failure of at a federal, state, city level for decades. Everybody not agree with this though. Further inaction is not the solution. So what we have to do is find solutions that work. I applaud the council, specifically Councilmember Harris, for the work you've really done to dig in. I know folks are sitting here and you may be critical of things that are being said today. This represents the smallest bit of work that these folks are doing. The work they're doing to find other solutions, alternatives, bringing in Nathaniel Fields, expanding DDD and bringing Travelers Aid to the French Quarter, more expansion downtown. All these efforts are working. We've got unprecedented resources coming into the city to address this stuff. What we have to do is come together and find common ground. We try to be a part of that as an organization. Angela, I was in that room with you last week. And one of the things I believe in, you're not going to find the solutions in rooms where everybody agrees with you. So we have to continue to have those conversations. We have to meet people where they're at, both in our community and outside of it, and find solutions that work. There's nobody coming to save us. We have to save ourselves as a city. We have to work with each other and find those solutions. We're here to partner with you guys, all these nonprofits, service providers, the city, the council members, but keep up the good work. Keep your attention on this. This is vital. We are really in a crisis. I've been in other cities that are experiencing it as well, but we have to find a solution, even if other cities don't. So thank you for the work you're doing. We support this ordinance. We support all of your efforts to make this a better city. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Kevin. Mr. Burnside. Councilmember King.
Before Mr. Burnside speaks, I just want to clarify something that was said by the commenter before, Mr. Ferguson. You can still, even with this ordinance, serve an open plate of food. We just ask that you throw it away. So it's not quite fair to say you can't do that when we're telling you you can serve buffet style scoops of food, hand it to someone with a beverage. We just ask that you throw the trash away. To say anything other than that is lying to the people present and watching.
Mr. Burnside.
My name is Michael Eric Burnside. I live at 2215 Felicity. I believe people are afraid. I believe people who are afraid do damage to themselves and others. I believe most Nazis in Germany were afraid in 1920s. 1920s were the roaring 20s for America, but the 30s came and there was a depression. A strong man came and made them promises that they might not have listened to had they been not afraid. I believe afraid people are a people who do foolish things and do not pay attention to their God and do not feed the hungry and do not give drink to the thirsty. They're only interested in their own families and they're only afraid for their own skin. And part of the fear, of course, is because people don't talk to people. We're told to meet people where they're at, but nobody will go into the bridge to meet the people where they're at. Nobody will go and say, I'll suffer with you tonight. I'll sleep on the ground here tonight. I'll spend one day of my entire life here with you and walk 1 inch in your shoes. No one will go. We always point to somebody else because in capitalism, there's always somebody lesser than ourselves, somebody below us in the hierarchy of humans. We'll pay you a living wage. We'll pay you the federal minimum wage. We'll pay you $5 an hour. You go do it. You roof the house in the middle of the summer. Call it a job so you can pay your rent. We devour each other on a regular basis and we call it life. But we don't give it more abundantly.
Thank you, Mr. Burnside. Anita, how many public comments on this one? How many?
41.
All right, let's do 5 minutes, then publish the comment, then we'll do a vote to put this on consent, and then we'll get to Councilmember Green's ordinance.
I think Katie Lanto from Harry Thompson.
Oh, Katie, yes, good to see you. What is your name?
Hi, my name is Katie. I am housing caseworker at the Harry Thompson Center, one of the 3 agencies that creates the Rebuild Center. We're one of the only places where you can receive a shower in the city of New Orleans. I just wanted to put some context into what we're asking people. So a lot of what we pride ourselves on is like building relationships. And I think that when we're like introducing items on this that are punitive, such as like asking people to not do something or else you'll get a fee, it is instilling fear. Of course, we want people to receive food. I know that all of you want people that are hungry to receive food when they need to, but I think that there's a way to provide resources to people who want to do that, such as trash receptacles and sharps containers and trash bags that we could, work towards getting to a solution that we can all agree on so that these health hazards can be taken to the side, but people can still get their food and people are not punished for trying to do good, no matter how well intentioned they may be. I just wanted to say too, for our organization, the Harry Thompson Center, I know that the numbers from the point in time count say that there's around 500 people on the streets. But I just want to let you know, we have 900 unique visitors every month. And that's every month. That's not all year. All year, we have 22,000 visitors, unique visitors. And every year we do 16,000 showers. And so if you were to add it up in the summer, it's about 100 to 120 showers a day. In the winter, it can be like around 50 to 70. And the point in time count is taken in January, one of the coldest months of the year. So I think just like the context of how many people we're talking about when we're talking about who is on the streets and who's receiving food and who's receiving services is skewed low because of many factors in those numbers. Thank you.
Thank you, Katie. And you guys are fundraising actively
Yes.
to replace showers and toilets.
Yeah, we're actively fundraising a capital campaign to replace our facilities, our toilets, our showers, and to create more case management spaces because people are very comfortable in our center because it's partially outdoors and they've built relationships here and they know that they can be trusted and are trusted in our space. So we're building more space so agencies can come and do work with our guests in their space.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right, let's get to online public comment, 5 minutes. We'll post the rest and then we'll move on.
Nathan, can you keep time for me? First comment is from Steve Wallenetz. Why is the council seeking to expand the city's power to seize unhoused residents' personal property? The city should be focused on expanding the city's power to ensure unhoused residents' ability to access needed care, including affordable and decent public housing and substance abuse care, not penalizing those who are already struggling. The next comment is from David Gross. This amendment of the ordinance, specifically storage of personal property, is out of touch. This is a seizure personal property that is unlikely to be recovered unless Councilmember Harris can provide data stating that personal property is typically recovered or that these personal property laws will actually be enforced by New Orleans officials who typically consider personal property junk. This should not be amended. Finally, Councilmember Harris's amendment for this specific portion of 701 does not actually change anything at all. Tiffany French comments, taking away people's possessions makes it harder for them to get jobs because they need things like identification, phones, clothing, etc. in order to get a job. You take away their medications and they die. This is cruel and doesn't help the underlying problem causing poverty. Micah Matthews says, council members, the unhoused folks who are the object of today's discussions are your constituents also. It's cruel and unjust to punish someone simply for living in the best place that they have access to. Please do not pass an ordinance allowing for personal property to be seized without prior notice. We would be stealing from those who have the least. Sweeps don't help people get off the streets. Affordable housing helps people get off the streets. Sarah Singh comments, hello, I'm a citizen of New Orleans and I oppose the criminalization of our unhoused neighbors. Ordinance number 34304 is a cruel and unethical measure that prioritizes an aesthetic that caters to tourists and unfairly strips people of their personal property and possessions. This is not a sustainable response to the housing crisis the city is facing. Such measures will only increase the severity of the situation and make it more difficult for people to sustain their livelihoods during the sweltering summer season. Please oppose this ordinance. Renee Duplanche says the city of New Orleans and the city council in particular have not taken the meaningful step to provide housing for the unhoused. Shelter is a human right. The sweeps and removal of homeless encampments is unnecessary and evil. You haven't built shelter for them. Let them build and maintain their own. Council members Green, Harris, King, and Thomas, where do you want these people to go? You are actively causing further suffering. Next comment is from Destiny Bell. This is absolutely disgusting. Why would you want to make the people who are already suffering the most suffer more? This will actually kill people. Are y'all really signing off on killing people? How is this even a consideration? The next comment is from Kara Larson. When Mardi Gras and Jazz Fest came and went without trashing the encampment, I was hopeful that the city had turned a corner on its treatment of the houseless. Clearly, that was wrong. Instead of trying to improve the living conditions at the encampment, this council wants to bulldoze it. Currently, there is a centralized location that service organizations can visit to distribute resources and engage in outreach. I'm sure statistics have been provided about crime, violence, drug use, etc. Removing the encampment doesn't fix these issues, it hides them. Next comment is from Jennifer Soames. Increasing sweeps of unhoused community members has repeatedly proven to be cruel and ineffective in reducing homelessness in cities across the country. What is needed is a safe and affordable housing. What is needed is accessible services and treatment for mental health and substance abuse. Right now, wait lists for Section 8 project-based vouchers and permanent supportive housing are years long. There aren't enough units to even meet the needs of current recipients of these programs due to landlords charging more than program reimbursements, Hurricane Ida and COVID. Please utilize funds to find solutions and not simply sweep human beings from the public eye. The next comment is from Lauren Jardell. Lauren is a paid representative of Tulane University. Tulane University supports ordinance calendar number 34,304 as part of the city's efforts to create safer conditions for unhoused residents while working towards longer term and more humane solutions. The next comment is from Nicholas Boyd. The comfort of moving through the world with personal possessions should be allowed for all members of our community, including those who are unhoused. In this brutal heat wave, summer, City Council should be considering how to distribute more resources to vulnerable community members, not how to take belongings away from them.
Thank you, Anita. And just to reiterate, this again defines personal property and gives examples as tents, bicycles, personal papers, photographs, jewelry, eyeglasses, medication, crutches, and wheelchairs, but exempts as non-personal property hazardous materials. And the default shall be that the item is treated as personal property. We don't have a quorum right now, so we can't vote on this. So I guess it'll just go to the full council. All right. Oh, all right. So we can go ahead and vote on item number 34,304. Again, this is the personal property ordinance. So I'll move. Can I get a second? Seconded by Councilmember Green. All in favor? Aye. Okay, this will go on the consent agenda unless it's removed for the full council on Thursday. Oh, I'm being corrected. Because we are beyond deadline, it will go on the full council agenda, all of these things, even if we vote for consent.
Thank
All right, next item, Anita.
Next item is ordinance calendar number 34,305. So this is an ordinance to establish excuse me, did you want to defer this one?
Yeah, we can defer 305. Thanks.
Okay. Next item is ordinance calendar number 34,308. This is an ordinance to amend and reordain sections 82,410 and 82,412 of the city code to increase penalties and to provide relative to food waste and distribution of food under or adjacent to an overpass or elevated roadway or within or adjacent to any encampment area.
Members of the committee, there is an amendment, and it is my amendment. It is an amendment to this calendar number, which was simply on page 1, line 2, insert the following. The first offense shall result in a warning citation, and then on page 1, line 2, replace the penalty for each with each subsequent. So we will have an amendment to vote on if you're in favor of that, and we'll move into the full ordinance. I do want to tell those who are present that if you wish to comment on this particular one, these are the cards that I have that identify this number by number 34,308. If you wish to speak on this one and you didn't turn in a card that said 34,308, your name will not be called. I do want to make a couple of things clear, and I'm not going to belabor the point. There is nothing in this ordinance that prohibits anyone from providing foods to those who are unhoused. And if you haven't had a chance to read it, the most important parts of this, it shall be a violation of this ordinance to do any of the following under or adjacent to an overpass, elevator, roadway, or within or adjacent to an encampment area. 1, dump, discard, or leave attended any food container other than in a lidded waste container. Yes, because there are sometimes well-meaning people, but also sometimes some people who simply bring trays of food by and simply leave them, maybe thinking that they're doing a good thing, but also sometimes I think that deep down, they haven't thought about what the ramifications are for just leaving food in an unattended container on a table. I've seen it. Distribute unsealed food containers unless the donor provides a closed container. So if you had a hot plate and you wish to bring it, you could bring this with it so that the person can store it as opposed to having an open hot plate of food where they couldn't do anything with it. And then most important in some respects is because people haven't thought about this, it looks good to get a newspaper article, for example, saying that you've helped, that you've gone out of your way. I understand it. I raised my family here and I want everybody to help them too. But number 3 is to leave behind with litter, food waste, or pans of food, unsealed bulk foodstuffs that cannot be reasonably consumed in one sitting. I would rather see people come every day and feed those who are unhoused so that they can clean up afterwards. So every once in a time feeding is something that is not best for those who are there. So at the end of the day, we will vote on this ordinance, but we have a number of cards, and I know that there are a number of online comments. All of those I want to make clear, there is nothing in this ordinance that prohibits feeding anyone who is unhoused. So at this time, I'll call Daiquiri Jones forward.
Before that, just clarify, if you want to do it buffet style, open plate, scooping food onto an open plate, you can definitely 100% do that.
If you would like to set up a nice buffet every day and put tablecloths out and feed on plates, you can do that. Nothing stops you from doing that. This is an anti-dumping ordinance. That is all. But yes, Councilman King,
It's action that
to
you clean,
clarify.
just clean it up to prevent the rodents or the sickness that can follow food not being properly stored or sealed. So please don't make this about you can't feed the unhoused, because that's not being honest to the public and it's untrue. Thank you.
Daiquiri Jones, 2 minutes of comments. 2 minutes of comments, please. Madam Chair, are you keeping the time? All right, I should set it on my phone. Okay.
Hi, Daiquiri Jones, 2406 St. Rock Avenue. I think that your hearts are probably in the right place, but I agree with what Angela said, is that, like the idea that the solution outside of maybe an educational campaign, the idea that there's a solution that really targets or penalizes the people who do mean well and the people who are trying, I don't think it's the best answer. And I think that applies to a lot of the ordinances that we're talking about in our general approach. It seems to be to highlight, like the idea that we need to crack down on things that really don't solve the actual issue. I think that you could invest in fridges. I think that you can invest in personnel. I think there's other things we can do, and even simply an educational campaign. But I feel like we have seen from the presentations that there needs to be a lot more money and more emphasis placed on solutions that have been proven to work. And I get that, it seems like it's a simple step that might curve like a rodent infestation problem, but I really don't think that it will. And I don't think that it is a priority relative to all of the other issues that have been stated. And just to echo that, like everything goes back to issues that are much bigger, like affordable housing, for example, or just actually having any kind of human connection, that a sustained human connection that really like informs us, like radically informs us of what's happening, as opposed to, like small changes that potentially just discourage people from helping.
Thank you, Mr. Jones. We have a for information only card from Sheila Delaney, which says, please take this opportunity to solve the challenge of food for unsheltered people. I agree that we will take on this challenge, and the challenge by being taken on looks a whole lot different depending on what you're doing. We have Mr. David Larson.
I thought I was being called to.
I'm sorry.
Oh, that's okay.
I just didn't.
Okay, I'm gonna be really quick. I know that your ordinance is not a don't feed unhoused people ordinance. I know that. But look at how many people have read it that way. And in this historic moment, we can't even risk the slippery slope of talking about our unhoused neighbors in this manner. I know this isn't what you intend. But what I'd like for us to do is to focus on getting food to people. You have providers who explain very reasonably why people sometimes cannot leave their possessions, their family, their dog, to go get something to eat. I have colleagues and friends here from Minneapolis who came to support this city because they produce 8,000 meals a week, 3 times a day, 365 days a year, and they bring it to encampments safely. And so I would just beg you, I know what you're trying to do, and I agree. I want things to be safer, but we have to remember that the problems with encampments are not caused by unhoused people. The stresses that they cause are not caused by them. They're caused by historic disinvestment. And we need to stop focusing on them and solve the problems we can. We can feed people. My colleagues from Involve Minnesota are here to meet with Councilmember Harris and others to talk about how they do it. So can we please table this ordinance until we are much more successful in feeding people? Thanks.
Okay. David Larson.
David Larson with the 6873 Terra Lane. Yeah, I'm with her with the should table this. Food distribution doesn't seem to be the problem here. It seems to be a garbage pickup problem. I mean, it's it comes down to homeless people not throwing away their plates when they're done with them. But that's not really the responsibility of the vendors or the people distributing the food. It's just got to get the homeless people to throw their stuff away. And then you pointed, there's no garbage cans around. And that's seems to be the bottleneck here. It seems to be the main problem. Making it even like the threat of a fine would discourage a lot of people from going and bringing food to the homeless. And like she said, like it's hard to leave your encampment without getting robbed because homeless people are entitled and bratty sometimes, but they're there and you got to deal with it one way or the other. I'm sorry.
Thank you very much, Mr. Larson. I appreciate that. Yes. Robert Keller. Whoever comes forward is supposed to state, according to council rules, your name and your address. Mr. Keller is not here. Monique Blossom. Your name and address, please.
Monique Blossom, Louisiana Fair Housing Action Center, 1340 Poydras Street, Suite 710. The goal of all homelessness policies should be to get people housed as soon as possible. I don't need to harp on the need for affordable housing when you had a panel of experts saying that's really the key to all of this. I've invested a lot of time in watching and understanding the budget process, and I know that we have money that can immediately go to affordable housing, whether that's our American Rescue Plan money, what comes back into the fund balance, or investing our own city money and developing and maintaining affordable housing. So I ask that you do that and make it a priority as we approach budget season, and I'm here to help you do so. Thanks.
Kristen Hamilton. Let me just tell you, it's going to be Kristen Hamilton, Leah Christakos. Sorry, I know that's wrong. And Heidi Dickelman in that order.
Hi, my name is Kristen Hamilton.
Your
my
address?
address is
Your address, Ms. Hamilton?
that's what I was trying to say, 1729 Burdett. Councilperson Green, I hear you that that was not your intention, but I truly hope that you can't believe that a whole group of people here and online, educated people, read this all the same way, and that we were the mistake or that we were wrong. So the way that your ordinance reads does come across this way. It does go so far to say unsealed food containers. And then it also says that it can be punishable by LARS 13 to 2500, which the average person might know what that means. But upon a quick Google search, it's a $500 fine or up to 6 months in prison. So that's a large penalty to pay for these organizations or a large risk. But you have a whole council or panel of individuals here that have said things far better than I could eloquate to you. So I'd ask that you listen to them and perhaps table this and focus on what is a real solution to this problem, a real long-term solution of affordable housing, which is what we have all tried to emphasize.
Thank you very much. Leah,
Hi,
could you pronounce your last name and your address?
sure. Leah Kalistiakos, 2312 Napoleon Avenue. So I am going to talk about a couple of things. First, I am a recent transplant from the state of Georgia. Recently in November, they passed a law making it illegal to give water and snacks to people in line for voting. Now that was precedented by several ordinances that condemned the population to give to feed homeless people. I know that because I used to volunteer for an organization called Food Not Bombs. We were constantly hassled and harassed by policemen to the point where we had to stop doing our mutual aid. So I am here to tell you as a telltale story that any amount of or any ordinance that contains any amount of punitive or condemning rhetoric surrounding the donation of food will deter the actual food generosity of the members of this community. Another thing I would like to say is the reasons why people feed other people. We all think it's because we are compassionate human beings that want other people to be fed, and that is true. But it is also a meaningful thing for people to do for themselves. I know people who spend money they don't have and time that they could use for sleeping and rest to spend feeding people because it helps their mental health, because it helps them feel connected in a world that is constantly telling us that we are isolated. Please consider a revision of your jargon, because clearly there are people, very educated people, that do not understand exactly what you are asking of us. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Ivy Dickelman. And then it'll be Chloe Denman. Ms. Dickelman, your name and address?
Good afternoon. Hello to the council, and thank you very much to the presenters today. I learned a lot of valuable information. I am Heidi Dickelman, 2263 North Prier. I am the Queen of the Society des Champs-Élysées this year. I'm also the president of our 501c3 nonprofit that feeds homeless. The pantry. In addition to that, I'm an 8-year board member with Stolen Bikes NOLA. So you guys talked about a lot of my stuff today. What I would suggest, if you're concerned about these large things, is figuring out a way to connect them with the community fridge network, where people will put them in containers, where they will be temperature controlled. This is a whole other resource that I haven't heard anybody mention, and they aren't in the camps. But we encourage people, bring us your party tray. Bring us the leftovers from your graduation party. There's people that need to eat this stuff. So if there was any way to channel these things instead of forbidding these things or making things harder. And containers, those containers that you should hold them right there, 15 to 20 cents a piece. We feed 200 people once a week in the camps for about $50 each week. Because we have some donations coming in, donated food. That's a lot of money for those containers. This biggest issue appears to be the city's inability to remove the waste. And if we solve, and of course, if we want to solve all of these problems, we solve the housing crisis. Yes to sharps disposal, Narcan, and treatment resources. As to the crime and the homeless issues, they are much less related than you would think they are. Being with stolen bikes, Noah,
We have to be fair. to
trust me, we
everybody
hear
else.
from somebody.
It's time. It's been 2 minutes. We have to be fair to everyone else. I
Okay.
appreciate your comments. Thank you. Chloe Denman.
Good morning, all. My name is Chloe Denman. I work at 2915 Perdido Street. I'm speaking on behalf of the First 72 Plus. I work as their policy analyst. I just want to say, first off, give a couple quotes. 49% of Louisiana adults have a criminal record, okay? Formerly incarcerated people are 10 times more likely than the general public to become homeless. And in the work that the First 72 Plus does, the recidivism rate is 50% in the state after 5 years. And a lot of this is due to the lack of housing and affordable housing that we see here. One of the main issues that we find at the First 72 Plus, we even have an ongoing voucher program to help our clients find housing, to help them when they first get home, because, you know, those few months are some of the most important for if they're going to reoffend or not. And even though we have this voucher program, clients are not able to find housing anywhere. That is the biggest issue we find. And without adequate housing, clients have a really high risk of reincarcerating. These folks are stuck in the cycle of poverty and just fighting for their lives. And while we talked a lot about shelters and we know that they're better than a lot of unsheltered spaces, one of the other biggest issues we see is the risk of opioids at shelters. And a lot of clients don't even go to the shelters and would prefer to stay unhoused because of the risk of falling back into opioids. It is a very ongoing thing that we see every day. And so I just want to end by saying that, one, the criminalization of unhoused people is a slippery slope, as we can see by all of the public comments and online. And food safety is not the issue. We need to focus on the real ongoing solutions, that is affordable housing. And like Monique said, we have that money. I've been also coming to the ARPA meetings. We have the money in the fund balance that can go to a real ongoing solution rather than something that's gonna maybe help within the next year or so. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Eugene Patterson. Ed Strosal.
All right, my name is Ed Strosal, 1421 Elysian Fields Avenue. I'm a restaurant worker here in the city of New Orleans. I'm also a volunteer with Southern Solidarity, an outreach organization that distributes several hundred meals, plus bottles of water, plus clothing, plus Narcan, plus medical supplies to our unhoused community every week. I spend probably a couple hours every week in the camps on Calliope. What I see there is not a problem of food rot, it's a problem of non-existent or overflowing garbage cans, overflowing portalets. I'm a food professional. All our food is prepared safely. All the restaurants that provide food for us is prepare them safely. That is not the problem. I know y'all say that this ordinance is not meant to keep people from giving food out. It's worded vaguely enough to where it will criminalize the work that we do if it's interpreted such. And beyond that, it will have a chilling effect on people that want to donate food. if we've all misread this law, who's to say everyone else will as well? Please table this ordinance, rewrite it. We can do better than this.
Ryan Hancock. Hancock. Just make sure I'm sorry. Nicole Trabille. Look, we're trying, everybody. It's just some of the printing. Okay. Charles Nicholson, got that one. Charles Nicholson.
Charles Nicholson with the Greater New Orleans Housing Alliance at 4640 South Carrollton Avenue. Earlier, Dr. Avegno brought up people were passing out pans of rotten food or uncooked food, and the ordinance as a solution is suggesting the white styrofoam containers. I don't know what's to stop someone like me from putting in bad rotten food in those containers and giving them to the homeless as well. So I don't exactly see how that's a solution. You know, you're worried about rodents and bugs. I live with 2 cats and they will scratch and bite into anything that they smell. Those containers aren't going to stop rodents at all. So you've heard already that there are plenty of other solutions that we can go to. Community fridges. Sorry, I'm blanking out right now. But to put simply, I mean, you can't overstate the fact that we need more deeply affordable housing. We need to get the homeless off the streets and into actual homes where they can be safe and where they can procure their own food in a much healthier manner. So, thank you.
Thank you. Keith Parker. Keith Parker. Leo Marsh. Leo Marsh. Unity of Greater New Orleans, Mueller.
Hi, Joe Heron Mueller, Unity of Greater New Orleans, 2475 Canal Street, Suite 300, 70119. I wanted to, unfortunately, 2 of the members of our Council of Persons with Lived Experience had to leave because the experience of life on the street is such that it's a luxury to be able to stay to the end of a city council committee meeting. But they were concerned about this ordinance and the effects that it would have on their ability to get food and the ability of other people more vulnerable than them to be able to receive the nourishing food that they need on a daily basis. As a representative of Unity, as a staff person there, I want to underline the importance of those who have spoken about the importance of affordable housing and deeply affordable housing to folks. Enough cannot be said about that. And in order to do that, we need to both develop new deeply affordable housing, and we need more rapid rehousing money to get folks off the street quickly. And I look forward to working with the council to find opportunities to do both of those things in the near future. Thank you.
Thank you. Michael Burnside.
So I'm a preaching addict, Michael Eric Burnside, 2215 Felicity, and I do love raising my voice, but this time I will try to remain focused on what a person asked of us. A person asked of us to speak of rodents and asked of us to speak of sickness. So let us speak of rodents and let us speak of sickness. Let us speak of optics. Let us speak of one way or the other. Let us speak of a metal scrapping deal that happened before this one in the same meeting as the homeless, because we all know that homeless people scrap metal. Let us speak of rodents because we know that homeless people bring rodents among us. Let us not mention the 2018 video that went viral of a French Market restaurant that had rats inside their restaurant. And let us not speak of the news articles of the 2020 that had rats all over the French Quarter, because apparently they were supposed to stay, quote, behind restaurants and bars eating discarded food from the dumpsters. COVID having decimated the French Quarter, the rats came out hungry and were looking for food. Rats. If we had a rat-oriented meeting, we would have more than homeless people here discussing rats. Next thing I want to bring up is sickness. There are many sicknesses among the homeless, not the least of which are opioid addicts, and not the least of which is 492 of them died in 2021. There are many sicknesses, but we're speaking specifically of foodborne sicknesses. There's a very interesting webpage. The webpage is iwaspoisoned.com. You go to iwaspoisoned.com and you type in New Orleans. 1 week ago, I had food poisoning at this restaurant. 2 weeks ago, I had food poisoning at that restaurant. 4 weeks ago, I had poisoning at this other restaurant. Turned out a month ago, there was a food poisoning case at the restaurant a couple blocks from my house. If we had a quality of life issue here on food poisoning, other people than homeless would be in this meeting.
Mr. Burnside. Thank you. I'm fine. I'm a bit perplexed, Mr. Burnside. I'm surprised you didn't say that everyone should be shut down if there's an episode of food poisoning, because that is, in fact, what the State Department of Health does when they come across a restaurant and they determine that there are issues of rats, rodents, and you can look at last week's paper, some prominent restaurants. However, Mr. Burnside, I appreciate it. I'd like to talk to you afterwards. Look, I'm not a possessive person. This is not necessarily my ordinance, but I will say this. There is confusion, and I will promise you that there would be no attempt ever to make it a criminal act to feed the homeless. Someone has used the expression, it criminalizes homelessness. It doesn't. It's designed to respond to what I've seen and what has been responded or what has been reported to me by the health department. And that was the motive for this. I also recognize that where there are concerns, they need to be addressed. I am pleased that we had an opportunity to have this meeting, and I'm going to ask everyone here, I'm going to withdraw this motion, but I'm going to ask everyone here to recognize that I'm asking all of us to work with those who provide food to those who are homeless, to recognize that there is a better way to do so than we have been doing so in some respects. And we will share information on food banks. We will share information on rodent infestations, and we will recognize that we need to address them in a better fashion right now. But I'm only concerned about making sure that those who are unhoused and those in the neighborhoods who are also affected have an enhanced quality of life. I will revisit this ordinance, and I just want to make it clear, the word is revisit this ordinance so that it can be done in a way that protects those who are unhoused and makes it clear to the community that wants to work with them what we need to do to make sure that our unhoused population and those who are around it are feeling better. I'm going to absolutely, at this time, I'm getting the right wording from the people who need to give it to me, so it's on the record. I'm deferring this motion until a future date, and I look forward to talking to more members about the council.
I think you should clarify it's not being withdrawn, it's being deferred.
Right. And I was given the correction that it should be deferred until I have a chance to look at it further and talk to maybe additional members of the council.
And I would just like to add, everyone who took offense or maybe was upset about the ordinance, take some time, the crew from Minnesota, visit Treme, walk the Claiborne overpass, talk to Mr. Charbonnet and those residents. Talk to the kids that got syringes stuck in their feet from just walking home from school. Okay, please talk to them. It's not a us versus them, but we shared this space in this city, and it's for everybody. It's not for one group. So I applaud the advocacy for the unhoused. I'm an advocate for them as well, but I'm also an advocate for those in the Treme neighborhood, the French Quarter, the Marigny, everyone else that's affected. You're past the food, man. You're missing the boat. We ain't even talking about food no more, so you can chill with that. I just ask the people to keep everybody in mind. Everybody in mind.
Thank you. And Councilman King, I also encourage persons to talk to some of those who are unhoused and hear from some of them how they don't like the way the food is distributed because it causes infestations in the communities in which they reside. But I'll turn it back over to Councilmember
Thank you.
Harris.
Thanks. So Anita, I know there's public comment on it. What is the protocol since it's now been deferred? Do you want to read it or no?
Oh, since it's deferred, we don't read it.
Okay, cool.
And if
I
you
just-
want to talk to me after the meeting, man to man, face to face, instead of yelling, we can do that respectfully.
Okay, all right.
Respectfully.
Thank you.
Councilmember Harris, I just wanted to clarify for your ordinance, 34304, since it's been approved, it can go on consent just as long as the.
I would, you know what, I'd like the other council members to consider it. So why don't we go ahead and put it on Thursday's agenda?
The regular agenda.
Yeah, and then maybe it'll be deferred, who knows? I do want to thank the panelists. Are there any closing remarks that you would like to make? I know it's been a few hours.
A very brief one to perhaps bring some hope to the folks in Treme who reported that they thought everyone in their area had declined housing. 3 of the people with voucher in hand are at the Ursuline and Claiborne encampment, and 7 people awaiting approval are at the Ursuline and Claiborne encampment, and we are working with all the others there on housing.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, everybody who was here today, taking your time to be here. Thank you for all the advocates, everybody who works with the unhoused population. Really appreciate it. It was a fruitful meeting. I will move to adjourn. Councilmember King seconds, and we are adjourned. Thank you.